Man,
Continuity matters not.
Do I look cool?
Yeah.
Like I don't.
Yeah.
Never felt like this. I'm not quite.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is great.
So how about a introduction from yourself? Introduce yourself to
Oh, me?
people.
This guy?
Yeah.
Little me?
Yeah.
Well, I'm Ezra Fulford. I'm the Dandelion thief.
Yeah. Oh, well, Ezra, I can see that you're quite knowledgeable.
Yeah.
In politics. Yeah, I can tell you're quite knowledgeable with that red bow tie and the TELUS glasses.
I haven't even done it.
The elections are coming up. I don't know much about politics or the parties.
First thing you should know is it's on May 2nd.
It's on May 2nd.
May 2nd.
May 2nd.
There you go. You're good.
Alright, May
That's the
2nd.
first thing. So the difference between left wing and right
Yeah,
wing.
what's the difference between left wing and right wing?
Like between the parties, between like.
Just the concept of like right wing and left wing and right wing.
Well, I think it's an artificial definition. I think it's weird because we have a division between left wing and right wing, but like no one really, a lot of people don't. It's sort of artificial. It is really an artificial division. Like people are forced into that. Left wing, the idea behind left wing is it's progressive.
Yeah.
You want to make sure there's lots of social programs to like help people who are in trouble, or if someone needs education, they should be able to go to school no matter how poor they are, or fairly large governments is the idea, so that you can make sure that everyone's taken care of. So the far end of that spectrum is sort of socialist-looking countries, and then right-wing politics are more like small government. Businesses are sort of the market's more important. You got to make sure that like the economy is doing well, so that people can so that people aren't broke, so that they can pay for school themselves.
Yeah.
For example.
So
because
they're not broke, so they can.
if the economy is doing well, then people will be able to take care of themselves in
Yeah.
that economy if they're resourceful and if they're like and it's small government because of that. You don't want to have a lot of taxes. You don't want to be paying the government a lot of money.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's all good. The problem with both sides, I guess, on the conservative side or the right-wing side, you end up with it's hard to regulate. It's hard to stop people from being like racist, for instance. Like a big part of the civil rights movement in the States was to get like small business owners and large corporations to recognize like every race of people is equal, and let black people go into stores and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Whereas like a lot of conservatives at that time at least were of the opinion that like because it's an independent business, the government shouldn't interfere with it. Do you know what I mean?
Okay.
And then the problem with like the liberal side of things is that sometimes the government's too big and too bureaucratic and it's not efficient. So anyway, the reason I think it's an artificial definition is because like in the States they have well, for one thing, it's a lot of baggage attached to it. It's got a lot of social things attached to it because like if you're progressive, then you may want to like small government, but you're pro like choice or you're pro gay marriage.
Yeah.
You want to but that because that's attached to all these right wing things. So like you lump all these things together into one area.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So like just
Yeah.
because you're small government,
It's just kind of like
means
the
you can't be pro choice.
Yeah.
From all these different standpoints, that they get lumped together into one wing.
Okay.
So it's like it's more like an army than an actual like outlook.
Okay.
It's like we don't really all agree, but we're going to band together and pretend that we agree and work together on some of these things so that we can work against these people who we disagree with more, right? So we're going to try and like make it work. Like anything they say about the Republican Party, the GOP, it's like a big tent. You can fit a lot of people in there, a lot of different types. So you can have like Tea Partiers, you can have like old school Republicans, you have everyone in between, and then everyone can work together and beat the Republican Party.
Yeah.
So yeah, you can have people who are, ideologically, who are in the Republican Party, but maybe don't agree with everything the Republican Party says. I think that's pretty obvious. Everyone has their own different opinions. It's just that people tend to break these things down into like, this is what this one party thinks, this is what this other party thinks. But there's quite these large spectrums. And in Canada, it's actually more nuanced because we've been around. I mean, we haven't been around for long, but we've had a multiple party system for a while. Because we used to just have two parties for a long time until like 1911 or something like that. And so then they had like 5 parties, and we've had like five parties since then. They always We have like different kinds of conservatives. We actually had for a while in Canada, like liberal conservatives, I guess you would call them. They were like left-wing conservatives. They were conservatives, but they were pro-choice when you need it. They're like abortion, but only when you need it. So it's like, well, that's of course that's when people have abortions. Oh, they're gonna go have an abortion. This is gonna be fun, you know. So and pro-gay marriage, and they had a lot of healthcare stuff, and yeah, so they had this big left-wing thing, but they were conservative.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? Like, and then there's the like a liberal party who are left-wing, but they often like they raise taxes or they deregulate things, and they I don't know, they're very centrist right now.
I thought of something. Oh yeah, so then we also assume that our politics is easily, like we assume that there's sort of a right wing thing more than there is in Canada. Because we look at the states and we see that like they're broken down so cleanly between left and right. You know, we assume we must have the same divide. But in this election, it's interesting. You see the NDP are going like after the Liberal Party just as hard. You know, they want to grab votes from the center and drag them left, I guess. And the Liberal Party want to get a lot of moderate conservative voters.
Yeah.
So the way it's breaking down right now, actually in Canada, is right-wing, center, left-wing. So we might have three competitive parties if the NDP do well in this election, and they're doing pretty well in like the preliminary polling. So
Yeah.
it's kind of soft support though. It's kind of like people might just bail on them.
Yeah, most people I hear say that they're gonna vote for NDP.
Mm-hmm. Well, you're riding. You live in like Richmond,
Yeah.
so that was conservative last election, but maybe we'll go NDP this election.
Yeah. I think
The States makes this illusion of easy politics. Their politics are easy to understand. Yeah, well, I think so. It's left wing, it's conservative versus liberal.
yeah. I guess they try to keep it like that.
But it's interesting because then they also have their executive power, and it's quite a bit more. So the president starts to sort of have his own power.
Agenda beyond. Well, in like the first part of Obama's term, he had trouble getting that thing through because his own party would vote against him on some things, like healthcare. So they got a very diluted version of the healthcare bill because they had Democrats who were conservative Democrats. The Republicans are the conservative party, the Democrats are the liberal party, and they argue a lot. And that's where a lot of that's the problem with in Canada. The left wing has had for a long time, where we're just busy arguing over whether we like the Green Party better, or whether we like the New Democratic Party better, or whether we like the Liberal Party or the Bloc Québécois. So we're like split up.
Yeah.
And the Conservative Party banded together. They used to have two conservative parties, and then they melded into one. You know.
Yeah.
So when it was two conservative parties, it was a little bit more balanced because the vote was split on both sides. And it's interesting because the conservative parties that Harper's running right now, one of the reasons why he doesn't let them talk at all, or go into he never lets them answer questions from the media, is because they're two parties and they still are there's still a fault line, although it's been blurred, and they don't necessarily agree on all these points. You know? So I think that's somebody I would hope to see. Oh, you want some water? Yeah, totally. Yeah, the Reform Party and the Progressive Conservative Party melded into one party. So.
Right.
Under Harper's guidance.
Yeah.
So
But that makes them a stronger party, doesn't it?
it makes them a stronger party, but it forces them to sacrifice some of their ideology, some of the reasons that they're getting to power.
Okay.
And it makes it more of like a platform for just one guy
Right.
to do what he wants.
Right.
It's really just Harper's party.
Right.
But unlike parties before him, there were just platforms for one politician. Like I think the Reform Party,
Yeah.
could be wrong, but I think the Reform Party was basically founded to propel one very charismatic populist leader to politics. So it's like his machine for getting into politics. And Harper's Conservative Party is kind of like that as well. The Harper government, not letting anyone else not letting any of his ministers, even like high-ranking people in his party, talk to the media. It's definitely his party, but it's more widespread. It's more bureaucracy. It's more like he's part of he's the puppeteer the machine, but the machine's still very real. You know what I mean? Partly also, oh yeah, the other thing that we don't have, that we have in Canada that we don't have in the States, is we have this separatist thing.
Yeah.
Federalist versus separatist, right? The
Okay.
Bloc Québécois have a huge number of seats in Quebec. They only run party members in Quebec, and they're a left-wing party, essentially. Like, they have some, they're pretty left-wing, let's just say. Yeah, so there's a sort of spectrum there as well. It's not just left-wing, right-wing, it's also federalist, separatist. So we have the Conservative Party, which is very against separatism. So they get a lot of support from that, because a lot of Canadians don't like the idea of breaking up as a country. And then there's the Liberal Party, who are pretty against separatism, they're pretty federal, but they are willing to give more concessions to separatists to make them happier, so that they don't want to separate. And then the NDP don't really fall into that category. It's interesting, they sort of came from another place altogether, so they don't really have the same problem. They've never had to govern, for one thing. So that, like, the Liberal Party at one point had to deal with people actually wanting to separate, the Conservative Party had to deal with people wanting to separate. The NDP never actually encountered that problem yet, so they've never actually had to, like, take a stance on that. Although, I mean, they have taken a stance, but they've never actually had to, like, enforce it, you know what I mean? So, they're, like, for all Canadians.
Okay. It's kind of, that sounds like a better thing.
Yeah, I want the country to stay together, but it's just another area that the Conservative Party uses to gather support from, because because Canadians want the country to stay together. The Conservatives portray themselves as like this firm hand on the rudder that's going to keep Canada together, and we're going to have like a strong economic future, which is going to make everyone great, right? But it's kind of unfair. It's kind of obscures other issues, other social issues, other environmental issues, and yeah, so it's just another divide that complicates things further in the Canadian spectrum. Which is why we had the Liberal Party, in power for a long time, but they had to make sure that they got a lot of support from Quebec, which they don't do as much anymore.
Okay.
That's why they have more trouble. That's the problem with trying to go more centrist, is that then the liberal elements in Quebec get annoyed with the Liberal Party for trying to be center instead of left wing, and then they leave the Liberal Party for the Bloc. So anyway,
Okay.
next question. I think that the main problem that we really see is that it's not that our taxes are too low, it's that our taxes on corporations are too low, and our taxes, I mean, especially in some areas of production, like mining.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure we tax some mining corporations a little bit more. They kind of have to stay in Canada. It's not like they can really go anywhere because we have all the stuff that they want to mine. So if we tax them, then maybe we'd be able to afford to fund more of the things that we need.
Yeah.
Also, maybe if we didn't spend a bunch of money on prisons and jets that we don't need.
Yeah, that's something that Harper's getting a lot of criticism.
Right, and so he's talking about how it's going to be a strong economy, but then what is he actually going to spend the money from that economy on, right? It's great to have a strong economy. That's awesome. But if the only thing you do with that economy is build your military up.
How much does it cost for a jet? I think even in the debate, he was giving a direct answer of how much it was going to be.
I mean, it doesn't really matter if he gives a direct answer or not, because he already lied about it. So
Yeah.
I just want to believe him whatever he said. I mean, if he lies about it, he can just say that he heard it, like someone in his cabinet lied about it.
Yeah.
It wasn't him. He was just given this information. And, oh no, so poor me. I'm the prime minister. What do I know? You know what I mean? So, but he already, basically he refused to